Welcome back to Fast Market here on the Schwab Network. It's time for our cash tag segment. For that, let's bring in Andy Swan. He's a co-founder at LikeFolio. Welcome back to the show, Andy.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you. So we're talking staples. Coke's had a rough time this year in 2023. You know, it was starting to go down before all this GLP-1 started coming out that maybe sales are going to get hit by some of these sugary drink makers. PepsiCo kind of cited it. Walmart's made some commentary about it. But what kind of data are you seeing? Because the stock's been under pressure so far in 2023.
Yeah, you know, not surprisingly, really a similar story to what we talked about a couple of weeks ago on Pepsi right here on this program. You know, we're essentially at LikeFolio, we're really not seeing any consumer data that shows a slowdown in demand for Pepsi's products or, you know, in this case for Coca-Cola's products. You know, it's just kind of one of those, you never should really bet against the American eater for a very long period of time. And I think that's playing out over and over again. So with Coca-Cola down in terms of stock price, you know, we're seeing mentions and, you know, overall demand for its products on the rise. So we're thinking this is starting to become a pretty compelling divergence opportunity. You know, we see a lot of their brands showing double-digit growth in terms of consumer demand over the past year or so, led by, you know, Fairlife milk. We're seeing good stuff out of the Dasani water brand. We're seeing good stuff out of Sprite, especially as it relates to the upcoming launch of their, you know, kind of canned cocktail, the Sprite and vodka Sprite that they're going to be launching in Europe pretty soon. I think Coca-Cola has done a very good job of reducing its number of brands and becoming a little bit more nimble to be able to react to the taste shifts of the consumer. And so we've seen that play out in terms of LikeFolio data in a really strong way. You know, and the other thing about Coca-Cola is this is a company that manages its financials extraordinarily efficiently, extraordinarily well. It's a company that's raised its dividend 61 years in a row. They engage in buybacks when they think the stock is cheap. I think this is just one of those companies that every time it's down, we like to take a look at it as a core part of a portfolio. I think it's qualified there with the stock down where it is and with LikeFolio data showing that the you know, at least the North American consumer is not going anywhere in terms of how much they love their Coke.
Yeah, Andy, the minute I looked at this name and I looked at the chart, I knew this was an Ozempic-driven sell-off in this consumer staple. And, you know, when people talking about losing weight, they don't mean the price of the stock. And sure, Coke has some struggles, right? They're struggling to get new flavors. And they're struggling the fact that sales are flat, but a lot of their increases are coming from higher prices, and that probably won't last forever. So there are some issues. But this company is a consumer staple for a reason. Their free cash flow, they're investing the free cash flow in other ways to grow. You know, this is the gold standard. I mean, it's amazing to me, and one of your graphs, looking at Keurig Dr. Pepper, looking at Pepsi, and still looking all the way up till now to 2023 that Coke still dominates the volume mentions for this. Means they are the gold standard in sugary drinks. Now, they're getting a different portfolio, but is this just another idea or another reason this Ozempic sell-off that happened? We faded it in Pepsi. We should probably fade it now in Coke too, right? Do I know for sure? Of course I don't. But boy, it's the same story we're doing here.
Yeah, it's the same playbook, and it did work well in Pepsi. I think it could work even better in Coca-Cola. You know, as we head into this, I think that from a LikeFolio perspective, the consumer demand data is very strong. You don't see, you know, consumer staples names like this that have such an enormous presence already. It's really tough to get to, you know, plus 10% in terms of consumer demand. That you've kind of got a lot of gravity working that keeps you pretty stable. But we're seeing that here, and I think it's a real testament to Coca-Cola that they're able to drive this type of consumer demand increases, while also reducing their total number of brands that they're trying to support. And I think long term, that's going to be a strategy that pays off.
Yeah, Andy, the one chart that I like is the mentions count that you have for Coca-Cola. That's reflective. I like that chart every time you guys bring it, where you compare the stock moves to basically your data, and the divergence there is the widest, or just off the widest level that we've seen in there since this data was on there from October of 2022. So is that reflective of maybe that you guys are positive going into earnings as far as your earnings score goes?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a similar story to Pepsi, where they came out, they beat, they raised guidance. I think that the concerns that are, the macro concerns, whether it's Ozempic, or more, in my opinion, more pertinent concerns, the overall economy, the rate that people can get from risk-free bonds, that sort of thing still is a damper and will continue to be a damper on the stock. But in terms of looking at, that LikeFolio data going up in terms of consumer demand while the stock is moving down, it's a pretty classic divergence play on a name where we don't really get those very often. And so I think it's a good idea. If people have had this on their watch list, the time might be right.
Yeah, this stock just about 2 years ago, Andy, or a year and a half ago, hit an all-time high. But you make a great point. I think people overlook that. Yeah, it's got a 3.3% dividend yield if it gets paid out. But at the same time, a short-term, maybe savings account gets you 5% at this point. So maybe that safety plays off. But still one of Warren Buffett's favorite. All right, great stuff. Great data as always, Andy. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
All right. That's Andy Swan, co-founder at LikeFolio, breaking down the data for us. Kevin, we got the data from him. We've seen the stock moves. Just bounced off of those, nearly 3-year lows recently that we saw a couple weeks ago. How do you want to look at this from an example?